Hello, guys. Thank you very much for joining in. Hi, this is Ganesh Nayak, and I help finance professionals and students to excel in their career. And I also help students who are appearing for FRM and CFA exam to clear the exam in the first attempt. And I'm back with one of the videos where primarily I'll be talking to my students who have cleared the exam, and they are going to be sharing the experience, their journey, so that people who are preparing for this exam in the future, they will get motivated. They will get some idea of people who have succeeded. Okay. So with this, we have today Neil with us, and hi, Neil. Thank you very much for joining in.
Right.
And yeah,
Not a
and you
problem.
have cleared the exam in this November, right?
Right.
And in the first attempt, right?
Yes, first attempt.
Now, before we start the entire discussion, for the benefit of the audience, if you could give a background, what are you doing? And primarily, before starting the preparation for FRM, what were you doing?
So essentially, I did my ICSE, and after that I went to college.
Hmm.
Then I sort of enrolled into. I was a commerce in 12th standard. I picked commerce, so I knew I wanted to get into that field.
Okay.
So essentially, what I tried to do was I tried to eliminate the fields so that because there are so many fields today, for me to particularly pick one field was very confusing.
Right.
So from commerce, I then chose the BSc Finance field, which I'm currently pursuing at NMIMS. So
Okay.
I'm currently in my second year of BSc Finance.
Hmm.
So once I got down to finance, I was sure that finance wasn't something that I wanted to do because a lot of people, when it comes to finance, the first thing people think either stocks or investment banking, and I knew that's
Hmm.
something which I didn't want to do. So
Okay.
what I essentially did was I wanted to find some sort of niche or some sort of thing which caters more to my personality. And I think that's
Okay.
where FRM came.
Okay. Perfect. Now, very basic question. When you started the preparation for FRM, you had just started your second year, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, was there any thought in your mind that will you be able to do it or not? Do you have any friends who have already done it? Something like that. I mean, what was your thought process when you started?
So the doubt was always there because essentially it was I'd read online reviews about how FRM is. And
Hmm.
firstly, I was at that time I was 19 and seeing an entire I think even on the Telegram group, seeing people who are currently in office 28 and 29
Right.
was extremely, daunting, and you do get nervous. But I think so that time I think you played a very key role that you said, just take it one chapter at a time. So that's what
Hmm.
I essentially did. So when I saw that in the start, I was very nervous. I didn't know if I was even going to sort of clear it. I had
Hmm.
extreme doubt about my own ability to sort of comprehend and understand these concepts,
Okay.
let alone giving an exam on it.
Hmm.
So basically, that doubt was always there. But I think so with time and with studying, it did go away.
Okay. Okay. The reason I ask this question is that a lot of people feel that if somebody is studying and giving the exam, he has an advantage. But that is not true because you don't have any experience. You're very new. You don't know what is risk management. You're hearing it for the first time. You're entering into the
Yeah.
exam. So definitely
Right.
you also have your set of challenges. Now, when you pick up the four books, you must have seen what is there in the four books. Which book, when you started the exam preparation, which you felt, okay, this could be my strong point or this could be my weakness?
So essentially, for me, since I come from a finance background, the financial products and markets book was something which I was more or less familiar with. I was
Hmm.
like, okay, and I feel, today we are all of us know what options are, all of us know financial products, all of us have read about it.
Right.
So there is a more or less understanding that, okay, this is something which I know. Also,
Hmm.
maths, though the FRM level maths is a notch higher than what we're taught in school or college,
Right.
but the basics are already there, like things like probability, things like regression, are things which
Hmm.
are already done. So
Okay.
those two books I knew was like, okay, though I don't know it, I
Hmm.
know I'll be able to pull through. The
Okay.
first and the fourth book, which I think is Foundations of Risk Management and
Hmm.
I think Valuation and Risk Modeling,
Right.
was I'd never even heard those words together before. So
Okay.
essentially, for me to go through those books and see, okay, these terms I've never heard of. What is this? I don't know.
Okay.
And so that was my first impression of the books.
Okay, perfect. So you, for the November exam, when did you actually started preparing?
I started my preparation in May
Hmm.
because I felt that essentially I have online college every day. So I knew that towards the end, I wouldn't be able to sort of complete a chunk of the portion in a very little time because I had also
Right.
college.
Right.
So I wanted that leeway and that time to sort of, prepare. So that's why I started a little earlier. I started in
Mhm.
May, but definitely I can say it paid off for me.
Okay. So when you picked up, when you started the May preparation for May, so how many hours were you sitting on during the initial period?
So during the initial period, what I used to try to do was the first chapters were relatively smaller. So
Hmm.
I used to be like, I'll just watch the video and understand these chapters. So the
Hmm.
first week, I think there your timetable which you had provided
This Excel sheet.
played
Hmm.
the Excel sheet played a very big role because the entire chapters are so beautifully organized, and that together they make sense.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
I finished the sort of relatively, the concept heavy chapters first.
Hmm.
They're shorter in size, but they're heavier. And then as the time went on and as my concentration increased, I went to the bigger chapters. So what I used to
Right.
try to essentially do is I started with 4 to 5 chapters a week.
Hmm.
And after about 2 to 3 weeks, it reached about 6 to 7 chapters a week, sometimes even 8 if I
Okay.
really enjoyed them.
Okay.
So, but
Okay.
I think so being regular, I think every day just trying to do that one chapter and then say, okay, tomorrow I'll see tomorrow's chapter.
Ha.
It really helped me.
That makes a big difference. You don't have the pressure of entire 60 chapter, because a lot of time you just get bogged down by the sheer amount of book, sheer amount of content. But one chapter in a day, I also suggest a lot of working professionals that do one chapter in a day on weekend, revise and solve the entire content which you have completed.
Yes, sir.
That
Yes,
way
sir.
also could also work. Now, when did you started solving the question bank?
So I essentially finished it by early July, the
You finished or
entire
you
thing.
started?
The entire I finished my videos or
Acha.
watching all the videos, watching
Okay.
all the concepts this year by July. So I
Hmm.
think I took a 2 to 3 day break, and after that I started with the question bank. So
Hmm.
in the question bank, I followed the same principle essentially. Was that one question bank of one chapter a day? Now certain chapters of yours have two question banks. So
Hmm.
that is immaterial. Just finish one chapter, revising that in one day.
Right.
And then I think so that compartmentalization of like खाली एक chapter का pressure है एक दिन में,
Right.
it really helps you.
Okay. Okay. And so basically, you started with the chapter-wise quiz, and when did you completed that?
So
Primarily
that I was
September.
done in about August, end of August, September. Yes, sir.
So July to
And
August
so
end.
then, yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. And then what happened after that? I mean, and simultaneously the college is
So
still there. College is still there.
yes,
Everyone is taking.
college is still there, sir, and you had those assignments every day. So you
Okay.
couldn't always be regular with your revision, but so it's more or less it's possible. I won't say it's impossible because
Mhm.
if working professionals can do it with their job, we can definitely do it with college.
So
That's the mindset with which I went.
how much hours how many hours do you on a daily basis were giving at that point in time?
So that time it had reached about 3.5 hours for FRM dedicated separately.
Okay.
And so, and I had about 4 hours of online college every day from 7:30 to 12 with a half an hour break. And so assignments of that college used to take 2 to 3 hours. So it used to
Okay.
reach about 9 to 10 hours, but it was manageable because so there was that gradual build up. It wasn't just
Hmm.
1 day, 10 hours. So I think
Okay.
that way
Got it.
it wasn't like an earth-shattering scenario where I couldn't handle it or the pressure was getting
Got
too
it.
much.
Got it. So once you're done with the chapter-wise solving of the question bank, what were you
Yes.
doing? And did you increase your number of hours by after that by any chance?
No. So I didn't increase my number of hours until two weeks before the exams, because
Hmm.
that's when that whole exam pressure actually came. Till then, so
Hmm.
I was just concentrating on dedicating the same number of hours to it. And so what I'd done actually is during the question bank, what I used to do so is I used to see the solution towards the end. I used to first
Right.
solve it on my own,
Hmm.
and then so I would see how many correct or how many wrong I'd got. And
Hmm.
so whichever chapters I was scoring less than about 65 to 70%, so I used to mark them. And
Right.
so during that time, after I finished the question bank, I went back to the concepts of all those chapters and I did all of those chapters again. So
Okay.
chapters like I think Black Scholes and chapters like swaps, which are very heavy,
Hmm.
mortgage-backed security. So those kind of chapters I really needed to do again. So after I finished the
Okay.
revision, I went back to them.
Okay. So basically, September month, you were doing a revision of it, entire content.
Yes,
And did you
yes.
solve the sectional test and the other quizzes that is there? You had solved it.
So I think the sectional quiz and even the important concept quizzes, the quizzes which you had, the entire combined hypothesis testing, combined futures,
Yes.
calculations of prices of futures. So those quizzes essentially were very important for me because so I didn't want to straight jump to the entire subject wise quizzes,
Hmm.
but I still wanted the experience of doing 3 to 4 chapters together because so having only one chapter to like recollect and having like 4 chapters to recollect is a whole
Right.
different ballgame. So when you have those 3 to 4 chapters, so it teaches you to like sort of step up, your
Preparation.
memory.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And
So
actually,
so
that was the
that
purpose of adding that important concept, because that you read the entire futures in one go and give a
yeah.
test and see how are you able to pick up the concepts or not, and then you
And so
can
I
look
think
at the entire
that that helped me in the exam also because in the exam when I would see a futures question, so I wasn't only limited to okay, say so suppose there's a price of a future. So
Hmm.
so I wasn't only limited to I think that chapter. It was that entire chapter which used to come together. So
Right.
even in that, if there was a sub question which was related to another chapter, I wasn't like okay, this is only in this. It can be probably from here or here.
Got
So
it.
so that bundling which you had done was
Hmm.
extremely important. And so I think to anyone who is preparing to combine chapters, not on the number on like say five chapters together, but based on
Hmm.
the topics, it really helps.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. So primarily, when did you completed everything? I mean, the sense. So by the end of September, were you done with the entire thing?
So I took about 10 to 12 days for these things. So
Hmm.
this is mid of September. And so then after that, so what I did was I again tried in order to reinforce these chapters because so
Okay.
honestly, I saw these chapters and I was very nervous. So I again I tried to give the tests which you have. So
Right.
so so these bigger chapters essentially had 2 to 3 tests. So I'd
Hmm.
already attempted one, and to see how much I had learned more, I took the next 10 to 12 days to give these tests. And so then I
Right.
went to your sectional test.
And when did you solve your mock papers?
So mock papers in the month of October.
Okay. So your exam was which date?
So it was 16th November.
Okay.
So I essentially started my mock papers a month before. So I remember about 12th or 13th October, I'd solved my first mock paper,
12th or
saying
13th
that.
October. Yes. Okay.
And so what I wanted to do was I didn't. So in the last 5 days, I was not keen to solve any paper because I
Hmm.
was like, if I score badly, I'm gonna get so nervous for the exam that.
Okay. And what
so,
was the average score that you were getting over there in the mock papers or in the solving percent average accuracy or something?
so it was. So the accuracy was between 70 to 72. So it started from about 68, and
Hmm.
so my score was it was fluctuating between 60 and 70, low 70s. Like one I remember I got 72, but 68, 65. So that was the
Okay.
range I was in.
Okay. Okay. Now, coming to the exam part. Okay. When you went for the exam, what happened in that 4 hours?
So essentially in the 4 hours, the first 10 questions were extremely stressful because so that set the tempo for my entire paper.
Hmm.
And so I think that time, I think before the paper, when I'd called you, you had told me that, don't solve the tough questions first, do all the easy ones first.
Hmm.
So, so there was this ABC strategy, which I don't know, I've been using for all competitive exams. So for NMIMS also, it was a time-based
Acha.
MCQ, which is abhi karo, baad mein karo, aur chhod do. So
Good. Good. Yes. Okay.
so that's the strategy which I use. So I solved the paper in the first round where I solved the questions which I knew. Questions which I thought needed time, I just marked them for review and left them.
Right.
And some questions which I thought, matlab, I will really have to spend a good 5 to 10 minutes on this.
Hmm.
So those questions I sort of left at all. I didn't even mark them. I just ignored them. I'm like, these questions aren't there for me right now. So
Right.
so So there were about 30 to 40 questions which I could solve in the first go. I'll be
Hmm.
very honest. That 30 to 40, I was like, okay, this I know. These I don't have to check again. Just let it go.
Wonderful. Okay.
So then I went to the review ones. So the review ones were essentially sir calculation of options. Calculation which I knew पहले formula recollect करना पड़ेगा. Then the
Hmm.
calculator is also very complicated. Putting it into that, checking whether my inputs are correct, checking the option. So sir,
Hmm.
that was there. And so then there was those C type questions which I knew they were from chapters which I found difficult. I already
Hmm.
had like a sort of bias against it. So I'm like, we'll keep this
Okay.
for the end. So actually, to give you a time-wise breakdown, in the first 1 hour, I finished all the questions which I knew quick, like the questions which you could answer in 10 seconds, the small objective type. So
Right.
then the next 1.5 hour, I took to sort of attempt the remaining about 20, 30 questions. No, sorry, 30 to 40 questions, which is about 70 to 80 questions were done by like 2.5 hours.
Hmm.
So then essentially I just took a break for like 5 minutes.
Okay.
I went to the bathroom, I washed my face, sort of took a few deep breaths, came
Right.
back, spent the next hour so looking at it. And so then what I'd done is once those B and C type questions, I hadn't looked at them. After looking at them, the ones where I was sure, so
Hmm.
I like marked them and I didn't mark them for review. The ones I was unsure about,
Okay.
I marked them for review. So in the last hour, the first half an hour, I checked all the questions which I had thought are correct. First 15
Okay.
to 20 minutes, just go through them, see कि मतलब overconfidence में I have not marked something else only, ना, because
Okay. Okay.
because FRM has that thing where sometimes they ask you where
Very
you
close
think they're
questions.
asking
Yeah.
which option is correct, but
Right.
essentially they're asking you which option is wrong.
Hmm.
So I just was checking that the first 15 to 20 minutes, and so the remaining 40 minutes I was just going through the questions I had marked for review. And so I think
Okay.
towards the end, there were about two or three questions I had absolutely no answer to. I'll be very honest about that.
Right.
So
Right.
those questions I just marked randomly, like what option I thought correct,
Hmm.
closest. I made an educated guess essentially.
Okay.
So
So so
so that's
basically,
essentially
if
what
I
I did.
summarize this, basically, so you bifurcated your entire 100 question into A, B, C. Abhi karo, you will do now. So that were around 30 questions, 30, 35 questions or 40 questions. Baad mein karo, so that was a question that you had kept for review. You went through that section. In that also, you were very confident on some questions and not so confident on the other questions. Okay. And finally, you came to the C questions, which you had some biasness towards, which you were not sure. And again, at the end, primarily looked at those questions out of B section to verify that, okay, whether I've done it correctly or not. Right. So that is the basic strategy that you had used. Now,
Yes, sir.
uh, if I look at the bifurcation, how many questions were in that C category that you were not at all sure, or it was from the chapter
So
you found it difficult?
so essentially there weren't a lot. There were only about 5 to 10. These were
Okay.
essentially
Okay.
questions from basically chapters which I'd done, but I'd done either very long ago or I was
Mm-hmm.
very nervous about these chapters from the start.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially,
Okay.
sir, it wasn't that I couldn't remember them. It was that I just needed some confidence that my rest of the paper has gone good, that I can
Got it.
spend time on this. So
Got it.
so that's essentially so about 5 to 10 in them. So I think majority of the questions were in the B type because so I think my paper, as everyone's paper was this year, was very theory heavy. So there was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
reading. So that reading was taking me a lot of time. And so I think in the start that was making me very apprehensive because I didn't want to spend too much time on one question.
Right. Right.
And so as a thumb rule, what I attempted to do was that every question I just in the first round of this, I
Mm.
wanted to spend not more than 2 minutes per question. So
That's
if
great.
I'm solving a question and I've reached 2 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
so I think your strategy also made a lot of sense that time. That I just wrote down the question and the options which will be probable. Matlab, I think it's these two
Mm.
options and just move forward. So that 2 minute time limit played a very big role in my entire time management.
Okay. Just to expand on the point which you have mentioned, that for the benefit of the audience, that what we had discussed in our sessions, that suppose you come across a question where you have realized that the option is either C or D. So you have a blank paper in the exam where you can write down the question number and mention C and D, so that when you come back and you want to take a final decision, you know it's either C or D, right? So this strategy can also be used. And now a lot of people felt during the exam, November exam, that it is very theory heavy. What was your say on that part?
So what I would say is the answers or the options were theory heavy.
Hmm.
So just to give an example, I remember one question very vividly. It was which of these portfolios is violating there are the qualities of a good risk measure. So
Okay.
sub-additivity was
Ah,
something where the risk of the portfolio should be less than the risk of the individual components.
barabar.
So what they'd done is they'd given the standard deviation of four portfolios, and they gave the standard deviation of each intrinsic item.
Okay.
So you had to basically compare and see. So it wasn't theory heavy. Like theory heavy was the answers. What was so there were numbers included. So
Hmm.
more than theory or anything, I think the concept had to be very very clear. It's not like you could just remember the entire book and you'll be able to solve it. No, you
That's
need
correct.
to understand what GARP is trying to say
Hmm.
with that. And so that I think is what they were trying to test. So a lot of questions
Hmm.
weren't directly from the book. They weren't directly theory. There were numbers involved. But the
Hmm.
answers were words, they weren't numbers. So you didn't have to calculate per se, but
Hmm.
you had to sort of recollect and use numbers and theory both. So that
Right.
was how at least my paper went.
So primarily, if your concepts are clear, you would be able to find your answer. That is what
Yeah,
it is.
100%.
Right. Right.
100%.
Now, because a lot of
And
people felt that they had prepared. Uh, so I think so some section of students were not aware about it. Basically, they thought that whatever is there in the book is going to come. Obviously, that's not going to be the case because it's a competitive exam. Obviously, but certain section of students, they were prepared for quant,
hmm,
and they saw theory. They, first of all, I think so a lot of people felt that panic, that
yeah,
okay, we
sir.
were not prepared for it, and then the entire exam got triggered in that way.
So
So
what I essentially happened was, so I think even Gav's paper and a lot of previous year papers, there were heavy sums,
hmm,
right? There were big sums. Like you had to do the entire Black-Scholes calculation. You had to do the full binomial tree calculation. So
right.
those big calculations weren't there only.
Hmm,
Actually, in its essence, Gar's paper, it wasn't very calculation heavy. It
right.
was more based on more than theory. So I think the right word to use would be your understanding. मतलब
Hmm,
आपको क्या समझ में आया? Like
hmm,
what are we trying to tell you? So
right.
that is something which I think. So sadly, what happens is people see the past year papers and what they think is कि ठीक है ये ख्याल repeat होगा. But so I think this is something which definitely changed. And so I think your mock papers had a very good balance of it. So your
Hmm,
mock papers, all four of them, had a good balance of theory, of explanation of theory, of understanding. So that
hmm,
balance, I was already used to that.
right.
I was not that. And so I think one day before the exam, a lot of people had messaged, ke, this paper seems very similar. This
Hmm,
paper seems
hmm,
very
hmm.
similar. So
Yes.
I didn't do that exactly. But so I think that just goes to prove my point that this makes a lot of sense that
Hmm,
it wasn't exactly theory. It wasn't exactly numbers. I
right.
think time they
It's
came up
more
with a
understanding
very good.
based. Yes.
It's more
I,
understanding.
I feel the pattern is in the future also should be around it. But see, it's a competitive exam, and a lot of you have to be ready for that surprise. So people who are saying that okay, we are prepared for calculation and not for theory, in the next exam it might be calculation entirely. So what would you do? So it's more about you being ready for the uncertainty. That's where the professional life comes into. You being a risk manager, you will have to manage that situation. So now
Exactly.
when the result came in, what were the
Yes.
quartiles
Sir.
that you got?
So I got the first quartile in all the four subjects, which
Okay.
was a big surprise to me also. Uh, because so essentially, so I remember during preparation, so the valuation model part, there was so many financial concepts which I was like, what is going on? So I remember even in revisions, that was the book I used to put first. That was a book where I used to be like very nervous about. But I think when the exam comes, that time that differentiation only completely goes away. I think that's the beauty of not having, book one, book two, book three, book
Right.
four,
Right.
which is that
Combined.
bias that ठीक है मुझे ये book बिल्कुल नहीं आता. It's just that it's like all four books combined together. So book
Hmm.
four, I wasn't expecting a one at all.
Okay.
Even in book two, the number of mathematical formulas, the number of things that I was expecting, and what I
Hmm.
saw in the exam, it went well. The exam went well for me. I was confident that okay, I have a good chance of clearing it. But so getting a one across was something which I genuinely didn't expect. And so I
Hmm.
think the biggest factor that played was I got out of my exam and I was like, okay, the exam's over. The results are months later. When it comes, I'll worry about it.
Okay. Okay. Now, after the result has come, uh, what has been the reaction about from people around you, or people who knew about this exam, your friends who were preparing with you and all of it? What was that?
So from my age group, firstly, there were very few people who go for FRM because
Hmm.
from what I've seen, at least in my cohort, which is at NMIMS, a
Hmm.
lot of people go for CFA.
Right.
And so two, three people have given FRM and they got 1,414 or 1,223. When they heard that I got a 1,111, they were extremely, extremely happy because they're like, we've given the exam, we've been there, done that. It is difficult.
Hmm.
But so honestly, everyone's happy. Everyone didn't expect it. A lot of people had to explain to the entire concept of quantile and explain the entire concept of how the entire FRM exam
Right.
works. But so the reaction has been very good, and so personally it feels good because so honestly this exam, like I would say, compared to the exams we are giving traditionally in India,
Hmm.
where you're just supposed to sit and vomit out, or like just learn concepts and just
Yes.
write the concept from the textbook. So this
Right.
entire understanding thing, so for the first time I felt that I actually wanted to study for an exam. And so
Hmm.
getting a good result in that sort of
Right.
exam and knowing that okay, I probably, so like honestly speaking, in my boards and in my 12th, I wasn't like the smartest guy. I wasn't like the student whose name used to come first in the list. I was probably in the top 20-30%, and I used to fluctuate there. So having this sort of ability to understand risk concepts and to be able to figure
Hmm.
out that, and so I think that just goes to prove that whatever marks you do get in
Hmm.
your 10th 12th standard, or even you're getting in your college career or in your MBA, so this exam will, it doesn't genuinely, it doesn't care about any of that. It just,
Right.
there's
Right.
months which you put in, it's just a fresh slate for you. And so I think having that fresh slate and being able to do well in it was
Hmm.
something which felt very good to me personally.
Okay. Wonderful. Now, suppose if somebody comes to you and asks you any three tips if he's going for the FRM level one exam, what do you think would you give that?
So the first step I would tell him is to start early and to be very regular with the prep. Like you might be someone who's working in the risk field, you might be
Hmm.
someone who knows options, who knows bonds, who knows whatever. Just don't take the material for granted. It is extremely complicated. The book says one thing, the questions are something else. So in order to understand the questions, you need to have a very, very good understanding
Hmm.
of the entire syllabus. And so that I think is only you can't spend 10 hours a day on it. So
Right.
be regular. Don't put in more than 2 to 3 hours or 2 hours in the start.
Hmm.
So that'll be my first tip. So the second tip would be is so to only listen to a selected few people they trust. Because so
Hmm.
when I was speaking to people, a lot of people told me personally that FRM is either two things: either you're too smart or you have a lot of money to waste. So that was essentially what I was
Okay.
told.
Okay.
And so honestly, at that time, it was a little demotivating. But at that time, I had few people who told me, just try it. You don't know what's going to happen. And so I got a good result. So what I'm trying to say is, just because looking at the pass rates and everything, like don't get too daunted by the information on the internet
Hmm.
and by what people are saying. Like you'll have 2 to 3 people who've done FRM, who you know personally. Just listen to them. Don't listen to outsiders a lot. And
Hmm.
so the third thing is basically just just don't stress out too much, because I feel this was the first exam where, okay, yeah, I was nervous, but so because I wasn't very stressed out, it allowed me to sort of think. And so this is an
Right.
exam which will need you to think. So
Hmm.
that I know, so this is a very generic tip, which people say don't stress out, but like not stressing out in the situation is a whole different ball game.
Right.
So in continuation to this, I would say, when you're giving your mock exams or when you're giving those tests, so
Hmm.
to simulate the entire test environment is extremely important. Like, so I remember during the mocks, I used
Right.
to stay alone in one room on
Hmm.
my tab and sort of solve it. I used to try to take only one bathroom break or a water break, or try not to eat food, try to keep that entire environment, because so honestly, even I have never given a 4 hour paper. And so giving a 4 hour paper is tough. And I think
I
that's
know.
the worst part about FRM. Like, the
Yes.
first 1 hour you can give it,
Hmm.
then you're used to that 1.5, 2 hour paper. So you're like, you can just, once the momentum starts, it just goes on. Like, that's what you think. But so it's
Hmm.
not that. You need to sort of keep that momentum up. So
Right.
unless you've given like, so 5 to 6 papers,
Hmm.
uh,
And
more than similar questions,
hmm.
so it's that the
So,
full way of sitting now is different. So
right.
it's just something else.
Right. Right. So adding to that point, I just remembered with respect to the exam, the way you sit for the actual exam. So FRM exam is like 4 hours, but a lot of people previously CFA was two types. So morning and
Yeah,
afternoon. So if you're not giving mock papers in that format, you will not be able to understand that your afternoon exam will always be difficult. They make the
exactly.
content also difficult, and also because you have that you've been sitting in that you've been in the zone for 4 5 hours, and then you have to again sit for that 3 hours exam. It is very painstaking.
So in continuation to this,
Right.
I remember, so my exam timing was 3 o'clock.
Hmm.
Now, so technically, I'm someone who genuinely likes to sleep in the afternoon. So I remember
Ah.
that that so I used to try to give my paper at 3 o'clock. And so the
Okay.
first paper what I saw was that by around 4:30, I was extremely drowsy and I was extremely sleepy, because so you aren't used to that time. So
Right.
even if you're giving a mock, I would genuinely suggest, it helped me. Now I don't know if it might help someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So one more thing after this is that, firstly, sit in the time slot which you're giving your exam,
Right.
because so psychologically it becomes easier for you, because you're used to sort of sitting for 4 hours and giving an exam during that time.
Right.
And doing this before the exam, so the last 20 days when I gave, say, 4 papers,
Mm-hmm.
I gave it between 2:45 and 3:10. Between
Okay.
this time I started it. So when the exam came at 3 o'clock, so I sat down and immediately I was in that zone of test solving,
Okay.
because so I was already used to it from before. And so the second last thing, I know this is more tips, but just analyze your mock papers. Like,
Ah.
so analyzing your mock papers is something which I found important, was that once I knew what I was going wrong, just write
Mm-hmm.
down the chapter, write
Mm.
down which part, and just do it again. And
Right.
so it makes, I know it's more work, and so technically,
No, no,
a
you
lot of
have to
people,
analyze. That's correct because till that time you'll
you
not
have to
understand.
analyze. But
Ah.
so honestly, from a student's perspective, I know sometimes we do get very lazy. Sometimes we're like,
Mhm.
so now next paper I'll analyze. But
Ah.
so with this exam, honestly, is very unforgiving. You let lethargy, or you become lazy once. It's over, sir.
It's going to show in your exam. I totally agree.
It's gonna
Definitely.
show.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, Neil, thank you very much for sharing your experience. And I can say that I got two next video topics also from this conversation. First of all, the ABC part, I'm definitely going to make a video out of it. And primarily, it's very good that you contribute to the community. That you
Yes, sir.
what has been your learning and what has been your challenges, because a lot of people, and this is what I feel is a big problem because see, I do take training, so I know there are certain set of people who are with me, but there are a lot of people who cannot afford to go for a training, who cannot, don't have
Okay.
time, or either taking only videos and preparing on your own. So they have a huge challenge. Nobody to talk, nobody to even
Okay.
discuss the part that whether they are going in the right direction or not. So these videos primarily should help them to understand how other people have done. Right?
And so essentially, what I feel is that if you are willing to dedicate this amount of time to an exam, it's like a normal ICSE, CBSE exam. Like just
Hmm.
treat it, go with that mindset. It's not just because there are 30-year-old people giving it doesn't mean it's a complicated exam. It's an
Right.
exam at the end of the day. And honestly, if you just go with the right mindset, I think so. When I called you for registration, that time you told me the first thing before sort of telling me this is your time to this, you told me that every day you get out of bed, I want you to get up and say 6 months later, I am passing the FRM exams. I think
Yes.
that's one of the
Visualization.
first things you told me on phone call. And so think that entire mindset from the start, like मैंने portion चालू भी नहीं किया था, but that mindset which comes in. So honestly, psychology plays
Very big
either
role.
it's
I
makeup.
totally agree. Because you have to visualize, or else you will be serious at the time of taking the admission, at the time of initial 1 month, but then again you'll just fall back.
Yes, sir.
That is a precise problem. If you don't visualize, you will not be able to succeed. That's how it goes.
100%, sir.
So thank you very much, Neil. Thank you very much for joining in. It was a great conversation and definitely going to help a lot of people in who are going for the FRM exam in the future. Thank you very much, Neil.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.